Hello, everyone.
Hey, how you doing?
Welcome to an extra mess with Artie Morty and Helen Stanland, as always, my co-presenters, my co-hosts. I don't know about you, but I woke up to the news that a man had beaten and choked a woman as part of mixed martial arts and won a whole tournament by beating up lots of women previously to that woman. And I thought for the first time, maybe this is maybe it's possible we could lose this one.
Wow.
Because if people can look at that and let that go on, I just don't know what Graham, we can say to.
There's always been the possibility that we will lose in the short term. I think that might well happen. However, I think longer term, it's not going to happen. It's not going to stay that way, because these things are going to even themselves out, and people aren't going to watch injustices happen again and again and again in the end without sort of waking up. When it becomes sort of the norm, right now, I think the problem is that it's being framed as a sort of civil rights issue, a civil rights movement. And people, they're not really thinking it through, and they're saying, yes, this is the new gay rights. But when it becomes clear that it isn't, I think it'll settle down. It'll go back. It will. It will.
I don't know. Yeah, I guess so. I mean, I'm hoping. I mean, always the good thing with each fresh outrage is the fact that it's going to pique more people.
Mm-hmm.
I thought I thought the interesting thing that one person said that I put on my site today was, "I'm trying to be open-minded, but this seems wrong."
Well, I've had the very opposite experience in the last few days. I really had to sort of step back a little bit from Twitter for a week or two, just because I was feeling a little bit, as everyone does, gets tired from the constant fighting. But I've been feeling rejuvenated over the last couple of days, because there's been so much stuff that's really, I don't know, just rekindled that passion for me and made me all the more confident that things are turning around. There was an excellent piece it was in The Critic by Gareth. What is his name?
Gareth Roberts.
Gareth Roberts is a wonderful person.
Yes.
I thought it was a great piece that put everything together very well, and it was an excellent sort of introductory piece about pediatric transition, because it really hammered home that this is the biggest medical scandal of all time. There was a wonderful podcast episode at Gender: A Wider Lens, which is Stella O'Malley and Sasha Ayad's crucial podcast that was talking about the dangers of socially transitioning children. And it really hammered home how much damage we're doing to these kids in just clear, unambiguous terms. And a point they made that I thought was really interesting was that, we've only just started transitioning children. The concept of a trans kid emerged in the mid-2000s. So the oldest trans kid in the world is like just reaching 20 about now, and that would be Jazz Jennings, probably one of the very, very first ones in the world. And he's not doing very well. This is not working out well, which isn't a victory per se for our side, but it's showing that people are going to wake up sooner. It's a tragedy, of course, but we're just seeing the horrible effects of transitioning children. That's just starting to emerge. So I just think that this is turning around. It's starting to turn around so very, very quickly, it seems.
Well, I'll tell you another sign that things might be turning around. I've noticed, and excuse me if a little trace of bitterness sneaks out in what I'm about to say, but I noticed that the careerist lying, hacks, Jesse Singal and Katie Herzog have started to position themselves on our side of the argument. Katie Herzog, I mean, in the most annoying way possible, said, "Why am I the only one who's noticing that there's no lesbians anymore?" when that's entirely exactly the point. Oh, that was exactly the point of her stunt.
I mean, to be fair, they've always sort of been on this side, but they've been trying to do it where the good ones, but where we're the decent ones. We're not anti-trans. We just actually can see the arguments properly. But Jesse Singal has been raising this issue for a long time.
Yeah, it's why I was a fan of
calling women TERFs whilst doing it.
Yeah, and calling
Exactly.
calling people cis, which anyone who calls people cis is participating, as far as I'm concerned,
Yeah, that was pretty galling for Katie to say that she's the first one to realize that this has just completely ripped the lesbian community, insofar as it is a community, apart. Yeah.
Yes. Whatever. As long as they're coming around. And Jesse got a review of Helen Joyce's trans into the New York Times, and that's a big moment as well.
Yeah. He's trying so hard to be even-handed by nitpicking at these tiny little nits at the end, and it was like, Jesse, this is a great book. You didn't really have to do that,
No, but sometimes to get an article in to somewhere like that, you might have to provide balance. But that was the article that we said last week, was on Sunday, that somebody had written in the Gawker, bigot for New York Times. It's excellent. There was another great article that I read today by Ian Leslie in the Ruffian, called Martin Luther King Syndrome.
Oh God, about Joylan. It's very funny.
So funny. It's so funny. Have you seen it? There's a clip of Jolly and Mom on Full Disclosure with James O'Brien, and it's superb. I mean, I'm not going to do the article is going to do it much better justice than me. However, what happens is that he's being interviewed by his close ideological comrade James O'Brien, and it's very quiet. It is as Ian Leslie says, it's like a therapy session. Very very hushed, low tones. And Jolyon
inside the actor's studio
sort of runs away with himself and says, I'd even be prepared to go to jail for my ethical stance. And James O'Brien sort of says, what might you go to prison for? And there's a pause. There's an excruciatingly long pause as he's like, yeah, there isn't really anything in there. And it's superb. And and you've got to be slightly careful that people don't look at us and say, yes, but you've got MLK syndrome yourselves. So you've got to be slightly careful here. But it's superb, and it really does make the point that there isn't really anything big sort of in this country, sort of injustices to fight, and so people really want to be part of a historical moment, and so they're creating it. And these blokes basically who just feel as if they would have been on the right side of history. They even say it, we're on the right side of history. And they're just creating it for themselves. They're making this conflict in order to feel as if they are there. They are the warriors. It's a superb piece.
As well as that, of course, quite a different mission from Martin Luther King, in that they're trying to put straight white males at the top of the pyramid.
Yes, well, he even says that pretty much. He says he makes that point.
Yeah. Oh, does he? Oh, good. Oh, I didn't know where Leslie was on this subject. So that's good to know.
Well, he mentions trans activism in it. Or certain or the poisonous rhetoric of certain trans activists. He uses that. I'm
glad he did that, because one of the things that's so annoying is the both sides argument. Which is based on nothing. But the thing that I don't know, one thing that surprised me about the World Wrestling thing was that, mixed martial arts,
misogynistic martial arts, is that it got so far without anyone knowing about it.
Presumably this tournament's been going on for a while, and this am I right? Was it a tournament, or was it just one fight? Do you know?
I don't.
Well,
I don't think this is an MMA crowd. I'm pretty sure.
Let me see. Hold on a sec. Won her MMA debut. Oh, it was a debut. Okay. Well, at least that's one thing. I thought he was beating up women just on the regular for a few.
Well, he might be if this is debut. This could be the beginning.
Yeah. Well, and did you see the my favorite fact about the whole thing is Fallon Fox went backstage to have a victory circle jerk with this guy, and both of them are ex-special forces. Like one's special forces, one's ex-Navy. And there are two more, like people who are trained to kill people, and they're fighting against women in the ring. Do you know what I mean? I mean, there could not be. I don't know. I was telling a friend about it, a beloved friend, if he's watching this, who you know, has been with me since I was a teenager. And I just find it impossible. I was trying to pique him with it, you know, and I couldn't do it. And it's like, what is it going to take? What's it going to take to make people open their eyes to what this is?
What was his take on it? That it's such a niche thing that it doesn't really matter. That, you know, who watches mixed martial arts anyway?
He said that they'll tighten up restrictions, they'll change things, and I was like, no, they're changing things to make this happen more often. That's the problem, you know. But you know, I don't know. I mean, I get a bit exhausted from, because I still have people who are like, why does it bother you so much? And it's like, well, why? I just say the same thing every time. Why isn't it bothering you? Well, all these kids who are cutting off their breasts and taking hormones that are ruining their health. Women having hysterectomies in their 20s. You know, like what? I think there's a
problem, isn't it? I mean, a lot of people see injustices and they think, you know, but they watch other people fighting them, and most people don't fight really for anything. They sort of, you know, they vote for the right political party that sort of broadly aligns with their stance, and that's it. So,
but for me, this thing is right here. But then some people, it's the women sitting next to you that are in danger. You know, it's the women.
But you know, but sometimes some people will wake up to something. And you know, they'll get into it in sort of in various ways. You know, I got into it simply because I was on Twitter, really, and I saw it then, and it was, you know, and it's an easy way to sort of get involved when you're on Twitter, because you can just start talking to people. It's easy to read things, and then it's also easy to get the message out. But you know, a lot of people, they see it and they think, well, yeah, that's bad, but other people will fight it, and you know, and I'll vote for it if it comes along.
Yeah, there's a sense of whose problem is it? And when I do talk to people about being active in this fight, there's this sense of like, are you a transgender person? Like, why you know? There's this sense of like, whose responsibility is it? Because there's this sense of like, there's a post hoc rationalization that if somebody declares themselves trans, they must be trans, and that means it's trans people's problem, you know? Yeah. Where it's like, we're talking about anybody can end up thinking that they're a transgender, and of course people who identify as transgender can affect anybody, especially women and girls. So this really is everybody's problem, but people just don't see it that way. They see it as an LGBT issue perhaps, or a trans issue specifically, maybe even a women's issue, but a lot of women don't see it as so much a women's issue as an LGBT or trans issue. It's a real problem of whose responsibility is it? Yes. And until we start seeing, I think, you know, until we start seeing more detransitioners, till we start seeing major problems erupting, that's when people are going to realize it's everybody's problem. This is the biggest medical scandal of all time. This is the biggest rollback of women's rights since women's rights were born.
But also, and more, it's a social problem in terms of how people are going about this, how we can see people fighting a cause. Now, it's silencing and vilification and threats of violence and lies. And I think one of the big things that worry me is outright lies, not being challenged, just being perpetuated. And as we've said, no comeback. You know, people we're getting to the stage where people can just lie with impunity, and there is no comeback. There is no punishment for it. And this is not only bad for this fight; it's bad for societies who are going forward. Because you know, if people can just lie all the time, then I mean, we're fucked.
Well, there's one. Perhaps we had to get sick with it before we were inoculated against it, because I think one of the things when this does break open, and one of the reasons why it's so hard to break open, is because all of us have been complicit to some degree in it. You know, obviously, there's people who knew from the moment. They realized what was happening. Julie Bindel is the example I always give. 16 years, I think she's been fighting it. The women from Wolf In the US, they mentioned that they'd been trying to keep trans women out of lesbian events since the 80s. So there's a few people, but I think generally this is such a failure of us as a group, of human beings as a group. The media let it happen, sports boards let it happen, social networking platforms actually helped it happen by silencing the people who were fighting it. So one of the reasons why it's so difficult and so hard to talk to about other people about this is that they know they're gonna be like the people who knew about Savile and looked the other way, the people who knew about Rotherham and looked the other way. Suddenly those crimes that used to be located to a specific group of people who are close to the subject or close to the source of the crime are now shared by nearly everyone. All the people who didn't speak, all the people who knew it was wrong, all the people who just saw Jazz Jennings going through what he went through and just, watched it and thought, oh, well, he's trans. So that's
But there's a framing, though, isn't there? There's a framing, and people are prepared to accept a framing. The framing around Jazz Jennings was, what an excellent reality TV show. Look at these excellent parents, so progressive, so open. And that was the framing of the show. And so I don't think you can really blame people. I mean, it takes, it takes a reasonable sort of strength of character to look at something and think, I'm not sure that this is right, and then actually talk about it. I mean, you might look at it and think, oh, I don't like this program because there's something exploitative about it. But a lot of people.
Well, I think what I'm thinking about. I think what I'm saying is something slightly different. I mean, like I do think that society, and I've said this before, has been groomed. We've all been groomed to a certain place. Like, for instance, that guy who said, I'm trying to keep an open mind about a woman getting beaten up by a man on screen. He thinks there's something defective in him, that he finds it wrong, right? That's how thoroughly and brilliantly people have been groomed. He sees a man beating up a woman and he thinks he's just looking at it wrong.
Second guessing themselves. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I guess what I'm saying is that we're all going to have to admit that, not that we were bad people, but that through a series of accidents almost, we let this world grow up. I mean, as someone tweeted today about the MMA thing, is this hell?
Well, it reminds me of that thing Helen Joyce said about how people with an education are more susceptible to believing nonsense because they're used to abstract thinking. And I think as everything is becoming more abstract in society with social media and everything becoming digitized and everything becoming virtual, I think it's easier for us to swallow nonsense because nothing makes sense anymore. It's like, Schrödinger cat, the idea that a cat can both be dead and alive at the same time simultaneously doesn't make any sense in a common sense way. But if you're intelligent, you can understand that quantum mechanics is strange, and you can understand that this is an abstract thing, and you can believe it. And it happens to be sort of true, sort of. And that's what I think people are doing. It's the smartness in us. We're learning to live in this virtual world where a lot of things that don't make sense have to be made sense of. That's teaching us to believe things that don't make any fucking sense anymore, like that men can transform into women by snapping.
Yes. And and a lot of people are also prepared to say, I mean, you see them say it, don't you? You see them say, well, I just need to be educated. That these youngsters, this is happening. I just don't understand it. But, they know better than me. So I need to be educated. But this for a lot of people is progressive because it shows that they have an open mind on things and they are prepared to sort of rethink that everything that they knew. So I think, I think a lot of this is people just, thinking that they are doing the right thing. They're sort of, they're giving it time and seeing what will happen because this is because this is right. Also, Artie, your objet d'art today. What have you got?
Oh, it's laundry day.
Perfect.
Don't forget, do your laundry, people.
Brilliant.
Somebody said in the comments it should be on a lazy Susan rotating.
The
tide is turning.
Oh, there you go.
Oh, it's tide. Oh, yes. Actually, that would have been a much better answer.
Oh God, I'm not feeling it today, guys. I'm not feeling in a good place. It's yeah.
I'm sorry to hear that, Graham. would you like to cut it short?
No, let's not. Because here I came in, worried about the MMA thing, and then you said something that was somewhat cheering.
Let's cheer Graham. Let's make this the one where we cheer Graham up. Hey, commenters, say something nice to Graham.
But no. But
I saw somebody tweeting. I saw somebody tweeting a picture. This was quite amusing. Somebody tweeted me a picture of a changing room that she had just been in.
Okay, I'm banning feeling fine because he said he's happy to see that you're not feeling good. You have been an obnoxious moronic troll for too long. You're gone. Bye, feeling.
That's very good. Good. So somebody tweeted me a picture of a changing room, and it was empty, completely empty, and it showed that it was a completely open room with just lockers and a bench.
Yes.
And so she tweeted it, and I retweeted it, and immediately somebody replied saying, "Oh my God, TERFs are all like, oh, look at this trans woman taking a picture of a changing room. Also TERFs taking a picture of a changing room." And I'm like, dude, it's empty. And they were like, it's inappropriate. And I was saying, well, what is your specific objection to it? What do you find inappropriate about it? And he said, it's inappropriate to take photos in a changing room. And I said again, but it's empty. So when you say inappropriate, what do you actually mean? And he said, anyone could have walked in. And I'm like, a picture takes like 1,000th of a second. I think they'd have been okay. They could have stopped that in time. But he kept on saying, but it's inappropriate. But he couldn't actually articulate how it was inappropriate. And in the end, he said, well, I'm entitled to my opinion. Which is honestly the worst argument reply in the world, isn't it? I'm entitled to my opinion.
It's
but what was conceding my opinion is really dumb, but I'm allowed to have it. Like, great, okay, you do you.
But loads of people, because I get it so much. People sort of say all changing rooms have cubicles, but loads of people in the replies are like, this is exactly like the changing room I use.
Yeah.
And even if there's one or two, doesn't matter. Look, it's a big open space. I think it was quite good to have it sort of visualized. I've bookmarked it. I might send it out in reply.
The other fun thing I saw this week that I really enjoyed was Nicola Sturgeon forgiving Janie Godley for her racist tweets. I thought that was very so. A white woman forgave another white woman for being racist and slagging off disabled people and the Irish and black people. So I guess that's okay.
That's interesting, isn't it? And as somebody pointed out, imagine if Janie Godley was on the other side. I rather suspect that there would have been rather less than forgiveness coming from certain quarters.
Yes,
it shows a very, very interesting tribalism.
And
now, why is Nicola Sturgeon chiming in at all? Is there some connection between Jamie Godley
she's
a non-British person?
She's a big TRA, and she's a big SNP supporter.
She's an SNP supporter. Okay.
Yeah, and she's a kind of bulgy voice when they need them, because most women are in despair at what the SNP are doing. So, someone like Janie Godley is very useful to them to pretend that everything's going fine. Did you see as well, Sturgeon? For some reason, just occurred to her to ban meetings outside Holyrood. Did you see this? Holyrood,
somebody tweeted like, "What problem are you solving with this? There has not been a problem."
Wonder what particular group does she not want to be protesting outside Holyrood?
I guess she doesn't like the optics of perfectly decent, safe women speaking up and speaking their minds,
and being screamed at by men who
exactly.
who Nicola Sturgeon is determined to force into their private spaces. That fucking guy, that was incredible. That guy, like I didn't really see him on the day. But when I got back, someone showed me pictures. He's always kind of just screaming his head off, and really frightening. And it occurred to me again that there's some people in this. I mean, when I say that we're all guilty to varying degrees, like there's some people who are particularly guilty, who are absolute. They're like the social work. No, I can't remember whether it was the social workers who were at fault with the police, or with Rotherham or who it was, but basically the people who, through embarrassment and worry about being called a racist, allowed the grooming gangs to operate in Rotherham for, and this always blows my mind when I say it, 30 years.
That's astonishing.
30 years, because left-wing people didn't want to be rude, which is exactly the same as what's happening now, except now
they were just girls.
Yeah, it was a combination of
they were just girls. Yes,
it was a combination of not caring.
Same victims again. Let the left on the wrong side again. You know. Sorry, Artie.
No, I was just going to say, it was a combination of not. There's this sort of kind of overcompensating for racism, trying so badly to not be racist. You're being incredibly racist, combined with not caring about girls. And this is exactly what's going on with this movement. It's this sort of like overcompensating with this LGBT, I've got to be progressive, and then not caring about the impact on girls and women, you know?
Yes. Yeah. The wallpaper of it, you know, and you know, I think I hate to say it, but a lot of women are really, you know, guilty of it, because, you know, the women who've provided cover for this thing to take over are really, I don't know,
they have, but I'm gonna again say, but it's more men. I mean, trans activism is full of men. It's men treating violence at women, you know, and I think sometimes you have to be really careful about sort of blaming women, because there's such a lot of, you know.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Like women have to be careful. Women have to be really careful what they say, how they appear, because they're much more subject to.
I guess I'm talking about the ones who really went out of their way. You know, like someone like Mary Black, who literally called women cunts who wanted same-sex spaces. You know, I mean, I say literally. She actually called them.
I know, but I get called. Yes, true, but you know, there's a huge
Jeremy Hunts. She called them, you know.
But then you look at, you know, you look at that tweet. Actually, this was interesting as well. That I think, I mean, I did mention it the other day. That tweet that somebody had posted a picture of the women on the train going up to Scotland. And
wanting to kill them.
Sheer amount of quote tweets with, you know, I hope this train crashes. And again, there's an argument been raging on my feed now for like days, where there are trans activists saying, but it's equal. There's an equal amount of violent threats. And you're like, honestly, this is again another obvious, blatant lie to try and say, you know, we're the victims. But did you see? I thought this was quite funny yesterday that that person had to retract a tweet of where they had made a little meme of J.K. Rowling saying, "I ignore porn tweeted at children."
Oh yeah.
So did you see?
I did.
So was it on the 9th of September? They posted on 16th of July. I posted a tweet of J.K. Rowling saying, "I ignore porn tweeted at children. This was entirely misleading as I took her words out of context. I want to make this defamatory and untrue allegation and apologise to J.K. Rowling."
Brilliant. I love when that happens. It's my favorite thing.
But what's interesting is that there is a lot now. I saw somebody called Jack Turban, MD, quote tweeting this, saying, "Look, the TERFs are all prepared to defend transphobic hate speech, but look, try and silence it when anyone criticizes them," which is the most extraordinary sort of egregious reading of the situation. Defends transphobic hate speech, and also the idea that this is silencing. And I've said, actually, far from silencing, this person has been allowed to, look, you quote tweeted them. They're not being silenced. But somebody, I thought, did a really clever thing, is that they took from Turban's tweet saying, you know, J.K. Rowling defends transphobic hate speech, and said, you know, and quoted it as, you know, Jack Turban says they have the right to a right to defend transphobic hate speech. So they took his words out of context and quote tweeted it. And I thought it was a brilliant response. Actually, it was done very well. However, I want to make sure that everyone is aware that this person has had to post a retraction, because it was an absolutely egregious thing to say. It was terrible. It was yet another attempt to smear, but they've had to retract.
Yeah, and I want to. I mean, the particular tweet that he did speaks to what we've been talking about. I totally agree, Helen, that trans rights activism is very, very male. It's a male form of activism. It's incredibly aggressive. It's misogynistic. It's all these things,
Yes, it is.
I actually think that it is an extension. I've been trying to work out my feelings on this, and you may not know as much about this as I do, but I think it's an extension of what happened in Gamergate. I think it was Gamergate just took on a load of new things they realized would be really useful, like shaming people. I think shaming people was actually the greatest one. Gamergate didn't have that weapon against women, but shame has proved to be an extremely powerful weapon to use against women. So I agree. I do accept what you're saying. Absolutely. It's it would be a terrible thing to blame women for this very male form of activism. I guess it's just disappointing when people, I mean, some of the women I know in comedy, who I was friends with, came out with this shit and wrote, shitty things to J.K. Rowling and, congratulate other
Lots
men.
Of people. Yeah, we've had. I think we've said so many times, been shocked at the people who have sort of stood up on a side which I would not have expected. Yeah. Really, really, really shocking.
Yeah, it's been crazy.
Anyone who would defend any sort of abuse sent to J.K. Rowling, or in fact anyone who would suggest that the things she said were sort of transphobic and hate. It does shock me slightly. It does speak of sort of very, very little nuance or understanding,
and a lot of privilege.
I'm just wanting to be on some sort of the righteous side.
But it's also
like all the kids that she made famous. You know.
Yeah.
That is so disappointing. And then they, it just was. Yeah.
Someone said I'm beginning to hate my favorite comedians, and I think you might find a lot of the people who called it wrong on this. I don't know. You might find that they don't get as loud a laugh on "Have I Got News for You" as they used to. I think that might be one of the kind of unseen casualties of this is certain people. I don't know. We may not find them as funny as we used to when they start, especially when they start pontificating about moral with any kind of moral authority. I mean.
Well, yes, I think that's fair. I think they're going to have to choose their subjects carefully.
Yeah, that's it. That's it exactly. But yeah. So anything else that's been going on? I think something funny happened as well that I wanted to draw everyone's. Oh yeah, The Guardian, of course. Not only are they totally fine with this man's victory in mixed martial arts, and wrote a hilariously sentimental piece about him. Fucking guys, ex-armed forces. But they also had a thing saying something like, think that trans is just a fad. Well, what about these women in, I don't know, Edwardian times or something like that? And again, they've got the. I spoke to I think it might have been Stella O'Malley. I think she was the one who said to me that kids are now looking at people like Boy George and saying, "Oh, he's trans." Yeah. And they're going, no, he wasn't trans. He's just a guy.
He's called Boy George. B-O-Y George. And he's telling you very clearly what sex he is.
Yes.
But they're basically taking anyone who dressed as a woman or appeared as a woman or presented as a woman in the past as a woman or as trans.
Yeah.
And that's what The Guardian are now doing. The Guardian are like a bunch of preschoolers about this, that they look at lesbians or women who had to dress as men to be taken seriously or disguise themselves.
We've seen it a lot, haven't we?
The
historical revisioning, the historical retransitioning.
But here's my thing with it, Helen. It's so fucking stupid.
It's stupid.
So stupid. I mean, who is in charge at The Guardian? Who is letting these children write these historically illiterate, revisionist things? I've spent a good deal of my life getting angry at people who I have completely lost any anger at. Like, for instance, Andrew Neil. Andrew Neil blocked me because I was annoying him so much, because I kept saying to him, why did you hire the guy who did the Hitler Diaries, David Irving, after he came out as a Holocaust denier? Why did you hire him after he came out as a Holocaust denier? And he used to tie that to his climate change denial. And you know, to me, Andrew Neil just seemed like a serial denier, you know. And then the same thing with, and climate change, the science behind climate change. I remember the left were all, you're not listening to the scientists and all this sort of thing, you know. And now the left are engaged in the dumbest, most revisionist, you know, they're placing people at Stonewall who weren't there, you know, or at least they're framing them in a way that's not true. They're framing someone like what's her name, who threw the first brick. What's her name?
DeLarvery.
Stormy DeLarvery.
Yes, Stormy.
They're framing her as a trans man, right?
Honestly, if the suffragettes weren't explicitly campaigning for votes for women, they'd have transed all of them too.
Well, that's the thing. We have to forget.
For riding bikes.
Transgender really is about saying anybody who's gender nonconforming, anybody who isn't binary really is transgender. They really are saying that. Just like they took homosexuality and turned it into queer and like made it a 10 times bigger population. They're taking transsexualism and turning it into transgender. They really are saying that anybody who gender bends even the tiniest bit, one little stroke of nail polish, poof, you're not a man anymore.
Except me. Except you, exactly. I put on purple lipstick and eyeshadow, and I fucking tilted my head at a really, really hurtful angle.
Yeah, well, Graham
still won't use my pronouns.
Next time, Graham, you got to do that in Canada. Canada do that? Because if anyone disagrees that you're a woman, you can sue their ass and put them in jail. You know,
brilliant. I'll tell you what. If I ever get attacked by trans rights activists, I'll make sure I'm dressed as a woman while I'm doing so, and
That's right.
I'll run around like David Williams with a high pitched voice as it happens, just to provide bad optics for it, you know. And I'll have them say, I'll say, I was a trans woman. You know, this violence that we're facing at the moment is just extraordinary. My favorite thing though is Pink News and Pink News and the Metro. No, who was it that covered me? The Independent. They refuse to use my pronouns. I always tell them, use my pronouns are they, them. You know, or depending on how I feel, she, her, because I'm gender fluid. So I say, you know, please use my pronouns, and they never do. They never use my pronouns, you know. So
I think you may have shown your hand already. I'm just putting that out there.
But you see, in Canada, the law is the law. You can say, I'm doing this to take the piss out of you. Doesn't matter. There's no. The law is the law. You either agree or you don't. The whole point of self-ID is I myself tell you how to look at me, and you shut the fuck up. That's the law. It's like, women, shut your faces. I tell you if I'm one of you or not, and you shut up and take it. You know.
I did see somebody the other day saying that, you know, cis people stop asking me what my pronouns are because it's stressful. Because you should, and it was because it triggers them because they realize that people know that they're not actually, you know, that there's something up and that they need to ask. And so they were very cross about cis people asking them their pronouns.
One of the things that this I guess is part of the reason why The Guardian loves this stuff so much is that the rules are so endlessly changing that they can just hire people to write these fucking pieces. You know, I'm triggered when you ask me, stop. Why are cis people doing this and why are cis people doing that? And cis people must try and stop this. Because the rules because they change so much, you can just get tons of copy out of it. You know, it's just like, oh, here's a new rule, here's the new thing that you have to do. You know, oh no, I can't say that. I might give away who I am. But yeah, it's these hot takes that keep coming in from people who profess to understand everything that's going on. You know what I mean? And none of them do. They're all just making it up as they go along. It blows my mind that people can't see that, you know?
Well, I guess this is a bit of a part of the problem with the internet, isn't it? Is that, you know, The Guardian need to generate content that is going to get clicks and likes, because, you know, people get their news sort of in all sorts of places. So unfortunately, they have to. I mean, I think in this excellent article by Ian Leslie, he shows a chart. Oh, is it this one? Oh, I may have misremembered, but I saw somebody anyway showing a chart where the more words, sort of emotive words that you use in a tweet, the more clicks and likes it gets. And so somebody, it's utterly horrifying, really over the top. You get more clicks and more likes.
I'm literally writing something about that right now. Yeah. Yeah.
It's hard as well because you do need those words. I mean, what do you call a woman being beaten up by a man on television and choked into submission? What do you call that? It's like I think that Ian Leslie's. You see, Ian Leslie, when you said earlier on, Helen, that we have to be careful we don't get Martin Luther King syndrome ourselves. But the thing is, like, we really are watching this egregious, appalling, outrageous, immoral,
yes,
stuff.
yes.
And you do have to have the language to describe it, I mean, I think possibly what the problem is that those words have been cheapened by overuse by people who shouldn't have been using them. Perhaps even me when I was on Twitter in my old days before I got into this fight. And it made it harder to see what actually is egregious and what actually is appalling. That could be the case too, I guess. But I would argue that our use of the words when it comes to people actually sitting at home watching a woman being choked into submission, I think that the heightened language is appropriate.
Well, yes,
of course. Those words are there for a reason. There are things that are extreme, and you need to use extreme language to describe extreme things. But when you use extreme language to describe banal things, you're just,
Yeah. Well, again, that's part of the problem with the other side. I mean, the other side, the way they describe things like misgendering and microaggressions and all this sort of stuff.
Yeah, hysterics all the time.
They're in hysterics. Yeah, So
I've got to say, there's another line in this article, and it's a quote in itself from the End of History by Fukuyama, which I have not read.
Yeah.
And the line is so spot on. It's incredibly interesting, which is experience suggests that if men cannot struggle on behalf of a just cause because that just cause was victorious in an earlier generation, then they will struggle against the just cause. And this is exactly what's happening, isn't it?
Wow.
We had this just cause of gay rights. And now that it's almost, they're struggling against it. They're struggling against same-sex attraction, and the same for women's rights. And it's now struggling against women's rights to undress and to have single-sex spaces. It's got the most incredible insights in it. I'm really impressed with this.
Yeah. Oh God, what was I going to say? You reminded me of something just there about the just cause thing. Oh, what was it? Oh yeah, I used to think with the internet, I remember there was a phrase I used to like because I read it in one piece and liked the sound of it. I think it was the public square. I think it was the public square. It was the idea that the public square is a good thing because it means that all our eyes are on each other, and we will be able. There won't be things like the Holocaust may not happen again, may not be able to happen again. But I now realize that we have as a species an extraordinary ability to convince ourselves of that what is happening is actually fine. I mean, I think that we've kind of sleepwalked into this period. I mean, some of us haven't, some of us have been fighting it, but it's really frightening how far we've come. I know this last time I'll say it. A man choking a woman on live television as part of a sporting event is we're in a really bad place. We're in a really, really frightening place, because if we can excuse that, then we can excuse, people being choked during sex, who didn't want it. Like we are excusing that. I mean, honestly, society has excused violence against, male violence against women forever. Look at all defense.
Again,
I mean,
this is in a way, this is no surprise, is it? I mean, we know to an extent that this isn't any surprise because society has always prioritized male needs over female sort of needs, or male desires over female needs. I mean, this is really not a surprise, which is why it's so obviously a men's rights movement, in that it's gained traction so quickly and so thoroughly. Like, this could never have happened if it was, if it was a women's cause, it could never have happened because society just don't take women as seriously.
Let me take another historical, like I've said this before, but the reason Germans started calling Jews rats and vermin and all that sort of thing was to dehumanize them. And now we have a group of people, feminists, who have been successfully demonized with the use of the word TERF. And so anything done to them is acceptable.
Yeah.
And so my idea that the public square would prevent future Holocausts was far too optimistic, because all that happens is that we all become like the little town that lived next to Auschwitz that knew exactly what was going on and just went about their daily lives. We all become those people in the little town. It's horrible being forced into that position, but that's where we were. And that's why, again, I find it hard to speak to people sometimes who aren't in this, because
But you know what happened to that town at the end of the war? The Americans forced all of those civilians in that town to march through Auschwitz and see with their own eyes what they had been hiding. And those people have found it so unbearable. All they had to do was look. They didn't execute them. They didn't charge them. They didn't put them in jail. They just said, we're going to force you to see. So they marched those people through it. And they had breakdowns. They collapsed. They could not bear what they had been hiding from themselves. And that was their burden for the rest of their lives, was to realize that they were right next to it. And they went about their merry lives, and they had their cocktails, and they sang and danced while this was happening next door, and they ignored it. And when they were forced to reckon with that, it broke them. And this is going to happen with this movement. People are just going to have to be forced to see what they, to see what they ignored. And it's going to be a reckoning. It's going to be powerful.
Well, I'm afraid I think a lot of it is going to come. And like we were saying earlier, Graham, it's a long game. I'm afraid this isn't a quick thing. It's a long game, and I'm afraid a lot of it is going to come in the next sort of decade or so, when the children who are all being transed so merrily transed now sort of have real issues. So I'm afraid it is a long game, and we're going to find peaks and troughs, and we'll win some, but we'll certainly lose some. But I can't help thinking that we will. I mean, in the end, it'll settle down, and people, in my opinion anyway, people will look back and say, well, that obviously wasn't right. That obviously wasn't right. I mean, come on, surely people are going to think this.
Yeah.
But I guess still think that we were weirdos for fighting it, though. They're going to find a way. This is what I find so depressing, is that I'm almost all in on this, and it's just completely upended any sense of normalcy in my life. And I'm still like, I don't think I'm going to get that back ever, and it's really depressing.
I've been thinking about that too. Yeah. Although, can I just say one thing? Like an old friend texted me today and said, I just saw your interview, and I haven't heard from him in about 20 years. And he texted me just to say that he and his wife completely agreed, and probably the first person to do that in a year. But it means the world, and it kind of makes you feel a little less crazy, and it makes you realize, again, we sometimes don't count the people who aren't saying things but are against
it.
I
think so. Can I just I'd like to say here that I think the circles I move in are slightly different. Like Artie, I think you are in, you're in quite a sort of liberal, a lot of sort of gay rights sort of circle.
And hipster, Graham, queer, hipster, liberal, Canadian.
I'm in a really sort of the nature of my work. I work with a lot of just sort of like, I don't know, sort of mathematicians, sort of a lot of logical computer programmers, and quite frankly, like virtually everyone I know agrees with me. I mean, a lot of people they think that the sort of talking about it a lot is they certainly don't find it weird. They actually find it interesting. Somebody said to me the other day, he said, you picked a really interesting fight, didn't you? Because at first, I thought that you were a bit like, oh, look at this incredibly niche thing. He said, but it's become so mainstream. It's been really interesting to watch it evolve. And honestly, so many people I talk to, they're like, yeah, no, of course that isn't right.
Yeah.
So I do think that yes, I think you will get it back. And I think, unfortunately for you, a lot of the people that you know are in these circles where you have to really make a stand to be on the other side. Otherwise, you will also get vilified.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense, I guess. Maybe I'm sometimes a bit too mean about them, because their cowardice sometimes really annoys me. But
no, but Graham, you have been you're a public figure, and you've been very publicly attacked by this. So you are particularly a lightning rod for this. You're facing so much abuse, and you face so many consequences. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah. Well, I mean, the thing that does keep me going is just the amount of emails and messages I get, and so many people who literally can't speak about it. I mean, it's one thing being a celebrity and worried about getting mean tweets or dropped by your sponsors or whatever it happens to be. But there's people who are losing their livelihoods, that Rachel Mead social worker. I'm not going to let that one lie, because they fucking named me as one of the reasons that.
Yes,
that
absolutely.
They fired out, and then they took it out. So I'm going to go for that one big time. But I don't know. Anyway, it's just sometimes you get sometimes the sheer repetitive nature of
but
this.
Honestly, but there's so much, there is so much more support on our side than I think that you think. But most people are either just thinking, oh, it doesn't affect them, but it will at some point. I think it'll ramp up and up and up, and then a lot of people will be like, yeah, I'm just going to say no when they realize that other people are saying it. I think, I mean, genuinely, I think like most people think that. Most people don't think that men can be women. I mean, we know this, honestly. And most people don't think that men should be able to change women's changing rooms. I mean, I think that's the bottom line. We know that the majority of the UK don't believe this.
Oh, we should say, some people mentioned it earlier, but Duncan Bannatyne has been brilliant recently. You should all follow Duncan Bannatyne and support him, because he's standing up for single-sex spaces in his gyms.
Oh, good for him.
Did you not see the last few days?
No,
I think he
I've
was
been really busy at work.
I think he was sick in bed or something, and he properly peaked. He properly peaked. In fact, he tweeted a Substack piece of mine. So I'm delighted that he's fighting it, and he's fighting it very vocally. His arguments are great. I kind of gave him a hard time once. I'm always giving hard times to people who turn out to be great, but because he tried to get someone to go to an internet cafe and beat up someone who was sending him abuse, and it was like, you can't just try and do that stuff using Twitter. Get someone to assault someone on your behalf.
Oh, that's pretty bad. Who is this for the non-British? Who's Duncan Bannon?
Oh, I'm sorry. He's on the equivalent of, I don't know what you call it over here, but over here it's called Dragon's Den.
I think it originated in Canada, that show, maybe, but yeah.
Right. He used to be on that, and it's just
it's one of the businessmen,
one of the dragons. Yeah. He runs health clubs, Bannatyne's over here, and he's been great.
Yes.
He's been great.
But I think, but he's always maintained that they should be single sex, though, hasn't he? I mean, he's come under fire in the past for this.
Yeah, but he's really. I mean, the thing is, before, he just did it.
I see him. Yeah.
He's really going for it. Yeah.
Yeah,
it's like like there's people, you always know someone who's been doing a bit of research, and they've just kind of realized, oh, hang on a sec, everything I instinctively believe is true and is correct. So he's been. Oh yeah, here we go. He had an operation and tweeted from his bed. That was like me. That's what happened to me.
He was on the same pills that you were on.
Yeah. I was coming off morphine, and I thought, why am I so worried about getting involved in this?
Just give everyone morphine; they'll all peak. It'll be great.
Hey, listen, there is something that coming up that it will be good. It's going to be for J.K. Rowling Day, the day she tweeted, I think. It's a big plan. We've talked about it before. And we'll be releasing information on that very soon. So so keep your eye. Watch this space. Also, if I could just plug something I'm doing tonight, I'll be speaking to, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry if she's watching, I've forgotten her name, but she's basically part of, she's a New Zealand feminist New Zealand is about to go down one of those bad roads, and I'll be having it explained tonight what's happening at 8 p.m. So
excellent.
Is there anything else we need to? Oh, Wales. Watch Wales. Wales next week. Big stuff coming up. There's a protest outside the Shannon.
Senedd.
Sorry, Helen. Helen, you know a bit more about it than me, probably. What is it?
No, I don't. I'm just telling you how to pronounce Senedd.
All right.
I think that's the only Welsh word I've ever heard that doesn't have a W or an L in it.
No, but it's got a double D at the end.
There you go. But there's a protest next week, so be there if you can. Yeah, I think that's that's it for me. Anyone, anything else we need to talk about?
It's interesting. This guy you mentioned, this Dragon's Den guy, it's a bodybuilder type. Isn't that interesting that guys like Joe Rogan and
he's not a bodybuilder. Valentine's not a bodybuilder. No, he just runs business clubs. He just runs them. But yeah, Rogan knows because Rogan knows. Because he knows.
These are the same kinds of people who become autogynophiles. The same kind of guys are like, I know what's up, you know?
Yeah. You think Rogan's an autogynophile?
No, but I think he knows that type. He knows Fallon Fox. He's the same kind of person as Fallon Fox, you know?
I know what you're saying. Yeah. Absolutely.
That's like what Helen was saying earlier about how men know that men can behave badly. So sometimes men are the ones who are like, no men in women's spaces, you know?
Yeah. Well, he's been great on this, Rogan. He's always been good on it. He did Meghan Murphy recently, and has he done Helen Joyce yet? No, he hasn't done Helen Joyce.
No, but I'm confident that'll happen with this book. He's been great. He's had Colin Wright. Is that his name?
Oh, great. Yes. Okay.
He's had good. Just so many people, like so many, half a dozen. GC people. Yeah, it's great.
He was great actually talking to Meghan Murphy about Twitter. He was witheringly contemptuous of Twitter's reasons for throwing her off. That was really, really good to see.
And apparently he's challenged Twitter people on some of this stuff, I think. He's contacted them because he has power. He's been like, what is your fucking reason for this?
Yeah.
And he was very like, these reasons were not up to par, you know? Yeah,
absolutely. Anyway, listen, sorry if my energy wasn't as
it's okay, Graham. That's fine. It's been lovely to talk to you as usual.
Always. I hope we've cheered you up a little bit at least.
You have, and people were lovely in the comments. Thank you very much.
Lovely, our lovely commenters
today. Rebecca Van Tassel made me laugh today.
All right, well, listen, I'll end the broadcast.
I'll talk to you on Wednesday then, guys.
I will see you on